Right, good afternoon, everybody. I've seen the flurry of entrants from 1 o'clock almost come to a stop. So what we will do is we will kick off our webinar. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, which will all be about implementing positive change and improving recruitment for your franchise network. Today, we're joined by a wonderful panel of 3 leading franchisors who utilise the Best Franchise Programme and our 5-star Franchisee Satisfaction Awards to help them implement that positive change and improve recruitment. So what we will do is kick off with a round of introductions. But first, in terms of who you have on the call today from WorkBuzz, you have myself, Mel, who will be hosting the webinar today. I'm responsible for our customer experience here at WorkBuzz, so I'm delighted to be here. And I'm accompanied by the wonderful Sharon, who hopefully most of you recognise. Sharon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Mel. Yeah, so Sharon, I'm head of franchising at WorkBuzz. So I've been part of the Best Franchise Programme right from the start. So I've seen it grown hugely from a handful of franchisors taking part to now I've probably worked with over 300 different networks, and I'm really excited to still see where we can take this programme in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Right, our lovely panelists, what we will do is ask you to introduce yourselves. So first of all, Aaron, would you be able to step up and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my name's Aaron Watson. I'm a Director of Business Development at Molly Maid. I've been with the company for nearly 14 years now. We've 4 years with the Best WorkBuzz Franchise Satisfaction Survey. 5-star winners in the 4 years, 3 last consecutive years. So it's been really good.
Anne-Marie?
Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie Martin. I'm franchisor and founder of Diddy Dance, and we've been doing the WorkBuzz survey since 2014 now, so our 9th year this year.
Thank you. And last but not least, Richard.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Chatterner-Haig. I'm the head of Group Global Support at the Taxis Group. We're now a global franchise, so over 280 franchise locations across the UK, Ireland, Australia, US and Canada. Yeah, we've been doing WorkBuzz surveys, come up to the 10th year now. And as you can see, we're really proud to display the badge, and yeah, we've been done a fantastic job to achieve the award for 9 consecutive years now. So fingers crossed we can make it 10 this year, but yeah, I look forward to talking about what we've done to achieve that in this webinar.
No pressure at all putting yourself there on Richard, hey? Oh, great. Well, thank you all panelists. And what we'll be doing is going through some questions that we've prepared for the panelists. But anybody that's on the call, please do put your questions into the Q&A box that you can find on Zoom. If we have time towards the end, we'll come on to your questions. If we don't have time during this webinar, what we will do is cover off your questions offline and come back to you. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you've got colleagues that you want to share any of these tidbits of information with, or people that have missed the webinar, we'll be able to share it with them after. So no need to take notes or anything or quote us word for word, because we will have a video of recording after. Okay, so without any further ado, let's launch into our first question. So our first question really is, why do you do the program to our panelists? So first of all, I'd like to ask this to Anne-Marie. Why do you run the Best Franchise Awards program?
Because I think it's the only way you can really get true, honest feedback. I think especially if you're a newer franchisor, you want to start setting this culture around, one, for the franchisees to make sure that they feel heard and listened to, but also I think for you as a franchisor, so that you can learn on your journey of being that franchisor, how you need to develop and listen and feedback things as well. So I just think it's that anonymous third-party element where you can really get that true, honest feedback.
Yeah, that completely resonates, I think. Aaron, is that something that you feel through your network?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we've been established for nearly 40 years in the UK, and kind of the franchisees, supporting our franchisees is at the heart of everything we do. But I think it's really important for us to get that kind of verification from them that whilst we believe we're doing the right things to support them, is it actually what they believe as well? So I think, you know, as Anne-Marie said, the anonymity of the program allows them to give that honest feedback, which we probably wouldn't get otherwise. So I think that for us, that's been something that's been really valuable.
Brilliant, thank you. And Richard, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, we've done surveys in the past, different platforms, and there's quite a lot of different surveys and like software you can kind of use. But you know, for us, and the reason why we do the program, yes, it's about the listening. I'll come on to that, but it's kind of what you get in terms of a professional survey and what that really provides to you. And I think that really gives you the opportunity to kind of pinpoint key areas that, you know, you want to kind of improve on, but it gives you the opportunity to properly listen to your network. And there's different ways, different touch points you can kind of do that throughout the year. But this is a real opportunity to really take on board all of their feedback, because yeah, we've achieved the award for, you know, 9 consecutive years, but it doesn't mean that we know it all, we know everything, we're great at everything, but that's definitely not the case. We've achieved that through constantly listening to the surveys, to the franchisees, and each year then taking that feedback and then continuously improving, continuously developing, improving, enhancing components, parts of the franchise, which perhaps we didn't realize perhaps weren't up to the, you know, the standard we expected, but they've given us the opportunity to kind of keep improving and keep trying to be the best that we can be. So yeah, I mean, it's always just listening and then acting on that feedback.
Great. So some real synergies there across all three of you, you know, the anonymity that it enables people to have a true voice and for you to improve. I think it can be very lonely as a franchisor through your journey and, you know, thinking that you should know the answers, etc. So it's good to hear you listening to people. And as you said, Richard, I think using it to continuously improve. There's always more we can be doing as leaders, as businesses to further improve. And you know, by listening to franchisees and people, that there's no better way of really getting a measure of what to do next.
I'll just say that just to touch on the other guys' points, the third-party validation, though, that is really key. And I think kind of, you know, we all hear some great feedback from the network, from the franchisees, and sometimes we'll get a hamper into the office for, you know, for like going above and beyond. That's which is great. We love that. But to get that third-party validation is really significant, and I think for us that's probably one of the most important awards that we do have.
Brilliant. I think that's it demonstrates it. I think all three of you have won this award again and again. I mean, we marketed this as 3 panelists that have won the award over 20 times between you all, so it demonstrates that commitment to keep improving. And what we see is that the same won't keep you up there. So you won't win 5-star year on year unless you are driving that. So just related to how you've been learning, utilizing your surveys and your reports, what have been your key takeaways from reports over the years that have helped you improve your network or how you approach things? Richard, if I can come to you first.
Yeah, just following on from what I said, really, because we get two reports that come out from the survey. So we get the benchmark report. So that's a really nice visual representation. You get, you know, some really professional graphs. You can really benchmark yourself against others in the industry. So that gives you a good idea as to kind of where you are. But also you can benchmark yourself against the previous year as well, to kind of just to see what areas where you have improved, or perhaps areas where perhaps you may have kind of just, you know, not as done as well. And they're the kind of key areas you need to kind of focus and hone in on. The second part is the comments report, and the comments report is so valuable. And it's and what we kind of do, we print those reports out, we get a highlighter pen, and we just kind of go through them, because you can identify some trends. You get some really positive comments in a few areas, and sometimes you may get a few comments you weren't expecting, and some that aren't so good. There may be kind of few keep creeping up, so you know, you can kind of just like highlight those and then start to draw your own conclusions as to say, right, okay, I think perhaps we could do with a little bit of training here that we need to provide to the network, and we need to kind of sort of focus in on particular areas. And for us, one of those was kind of our nurturing for franchisees after they've done their initial training course, that kind of ongoing support and being a bit closer to them, and, you know, spend a bit more time visiting, those sorts of things. And that's something we've taken from the reports, and an example of kind of how we've taken that, acknowledged it, and then put it into action.
Brilliant. Anne-Marie, how's your experience been through the reports and learning where to improve and what to do?
I think, like Richard said, because of the layout of the reports, and when you get the full report with all the comments on, obviously it's anonymous, so you don't know who said what, but it gives you that point to also analyse things that might have been missed. So you think you've communicated it brilliantly to the network, and then these comments start coming in, and you're like, oh. So it gives us a chance to reiterate things that some in the network may have missed, but it also helps us analyse how we are communicating and what we can maybe do to improve that communication with the franchisees, so that information, it is a lot to take in on training, ongoing, and we're always trying to develop new things. So it's about finding that best way so that it is going in and people are really understanding and listening to the information you're putting out there. But I think also it's checking that your goals are aligned with the network. So as a franchisor, you said, you know, it can be a very lonely place, and you feel responsible to make sure that you are, okay, this is the vision, this is the goals, this is what we're going for. And then sometimes you'll get comments because of all the details you get, and something can be way offline. You're like, oh, I'd not actually thought about that, or, oh, we seem to be a bit misaligned for the future. So it helps you, again, better communicate that two-way street with your network to make sure that you're aligned on the visions and goals for the future as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've come from a comms background. You can tell people something 10 times and they still wouldn't have heard you. And it's great that you see that through the lens of, look, we've just got to think about how we're doing this in a different way, and that realignment to your brand and goals. As much as you think you might do it once, you've got to do it again and again and again and again throughout time, haven't you? Which is brilliant that you've seen to be able to pick up through your comments reports and the feedback that you've received. Aaron, does any of this relate to you as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, we discussed it before. I mean, really, you know, what Anne-Marie was saying, it's that communication. You know, some of the feedback that we were receiving, we knew that we had actually, you know, given them information about that or dealt with some of their concerns, but clearly they weren't receiving that for whatever reason that was. So, you know, that really kind of reinforced us to look at how we were communicating. And one of the things that we introduced at the beginning of the year was Workplace by Meta, which is the kind of the Facebook for business essentially. And, you know, we've cut down, you know, from sending out these kind of really long memos that, you know, was kind of, they were clearly missing the key points within that. And this platform allows us to kind of really put those kind of important salient points in quite condensed format that they can then interact with as well. So rather than just being a one-way communication, which was a memo out to them, this really allows them to be getting involved in the conversation and putting comments back to us. And I think the level of engagement has significantly increased as a result, which, you know, then, you know, having seen this year's comments, there was a lot less of the kind of the repetition that we would have, you know, had seen previously. And it was more now, you know, points that, you know, we clearly could still deal with rather than ones that we felt we'd already done.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. And I think, you know, comm systems are really critical, aren't they, to keeping people up to date and in tune, and making sure that it is two ways rather than just a tell, because that's what franchisees expect of your relationship, don't they? I'm just going to look at this. There were a couple of questions as we were talking through that last question that I'm going to just start to field out. Suzanne asked a very good question of what or how much of the report do you share with your franchisees? Does anybody want to take on that question?
Oh, I think for us, there will be key points, and like Aaron was saying as well, key points that will go, oh, this came up, but we just want to remind you where you can find this information, or what we're doing to change how we communicate with you. We don't share lots of comments or personal things because, again, I think that would devalue the engagement with the survey. It's not for us to pick out loads of comments that have come in and put it out there. Oh, this came in, so we're going to address this, because people would be reluctant, even though nobody knows who it is, they might be reluctant to then be as honest with you. But we always thank them for being involved. We share, obviously, that we've received the 5-star franchisee satisfaction again, but I think there's a level of detail that you would judge, these are the things we're going to address, but actually we don't need to give out every comment that comes in.
Yeah, There's a fine balance, isn't there?
I think it's the kind of the themes. If there's a couple of specific themes that come up time and time again, I think you can address them. And because it is anonymous, hopefully what they're going to see is that when you do actually do something which actions one of the points, it makes them feel good, because they'll go, oh yeah, you know what, I put that in that report, and clearly they've kind of looked at that, they've listened, and they've done something to act on it, which I think always makes them feel a bit nicer as well personally, rather than having it as a the wider audience.
Yeah.
From our point of view, totally agree with Aaron and Anne-Marie on those comments, and that's exactly what we would do. Yeah, we wouldn't share those reports or the comments and everything what we've got with the network, because ultimately it's all, the relationship is built on trust. Yeah. And they've kind of, those comments they've put in, they've placed trust in us not to kind of, and ultimately kind of share those with other franchisees, because this is the forum, this is the independent forum for them to kind of put those comments in. And with it being an independent survey, I think that kind of helps with that, because then they can kind of say that they know it's confidential, it's independent, right? They can kind of just put down what they're currently thinking. And then when we do get that, then as I say, kind of just go through the trends, go through some key points, and then kind of we can communicate an email or communications to the whole network with just the key bits there. And as Anne-Marie said, the way you do it is exactly how we would do it as well. And just fishing out a key few trends and those, and then just saying, okay, yeah, we've listened, we've acknowledged what you're saying here, and this is what we're going to do. I'll look out for further updates in the next few months. So yeah, it just gives us an opportunity. I think you look at it positively as well from that sense.
I think, Mel, speaking to some of the franchisors, after they've got their result, it's a small little things that make a difference in terms of that communication. Like Anne-Marie said, that simple thank you for taking part in a survey, and then any actions you sort of, or goals you put in place throughout the next sort of 3, 6, 12 months is always relating that back to their feedback, so they continuously know that any sort of improvements, things you are putting in place is based on that feedback they have given to you.
Yeah. So important, Sharon, as you said, kind of looping it back. People have very short-term memories, and we forget what we've said and what we've fed back, and that actually what you're doing is a product of what we fed back. So some really, really helpful pointers and tips there. Thank you all for pitching in there. I'll keep asking some of the questions that we have, but we have a couple of questions that are more about the franchise program that, Sharon, if you can have a look on and maybe type the answers back to some of the people, that will be helpful. Just looking at our next question, this is all to do with receiving feedback. Receiving feedback is actually quite hard to do, and it takes a lot from a leader to receive that feedback and feel okay. Sometimes it's going to be things that you love, sometimes it's not going to be things that you don't like, that you don't agree with, especially when, like, in certain positions, Anne-Marie, where you're the founder and the person leading from the front and delivering everything. Have you had situations where you've received feedback that you didn't agree with, and how did you react to that? How did you kind of overcome that?
Well, I think, as you say, being the founder and franchisor, it's very hard not to take things personally, because you created this. So yeah, it's like a stab to the heart sometimes. But I think what it does is it reiterates assumptions that can be made. And I mean assumptions as a franchisor. So I've found the 9 years we've been doing it a real personal journey for me as the franchisor as well, because I've always had this assumption that people buy into a franchise network because they want all the answers. They want you to have every answer to every question they have. And they want to be buying into something that you're passionate about and you're driven about. So, for example, we had some comments in the early surveys about actually being a little bit defensive on questions that were asked. But again, due to my assumption, I was like, but I thought that's what they want. They want me to have all this knowledge. They want me to go, yeah, this is why we do this. And this, but it helped me develop that journey of, one, maybe it's always hard in the written format. So we started to do a lot more on communication on lives and talking things through so that I could come across in the tone that I was intending. Yeah. But also to ensure that I was listening and opening up on that two-way street with the network. It actually, what I was finding out is that they didn't always necessarily want that one person to have all the answers, and they wanted to feel more that they were contributing. So it was more of a partnership, and I really learned that, and I'm still learning that over that journey. And I think a big moment for me was COVID, because, you know, everybody comes to you as that founder going, well, when can we reopen, and what can we do here, and what can we do here? And I remember on a live to the network sort of going, I don't know. And it was scary, emotional, but also quite relieving as well. Going, oh, I've never been through a pandemic before, and I don't have a hotline to Boris Johnson to know those answers. So I think for me, there's been a big learning journey for me as a franchisor, and just making sure you're not assuming things, and you're really listening and finding out actually how you need to be as a franchisor as well.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. COVID really humbled a lot of leaders. We had to learn that we don't have the answers. We've got to reach out. We're going to have to learn. That said, I'm not sure your hotline to Boris would have helped anyway. I'm not sure he knew what the rules were anyway. So
he wasn't following them anyway.
No, exactly. But anyway, we move on. Richard, what have you got to add in terms of, have you had feedback that you didn't agree with? What did you do?
Yeah, I think with a network of, say, in the UK over 250, you're bound to get some characters in our network, and we're bound to get some feedback that perhaps we don't necessarily want to hear that or would like to hear it, but you've got to take the positives from it. And sometimes those things can really trigger something to actually something to come good, something good to come out of it. And as Anne-Marie said, you know, yeah, a lot of these comments and that you can't take them personally, but you got to look at the big picture. You got to take a step back from it and kind of read between the lines and try to understand where they're coming from. But we've found that so helpful for us. You know, for the interesting observation we've made from this is that sometimes it's those people who are the least engaged are the ones who will kind of make the the more critical comments.
Yep.
And it will be perhaps, and some of you on this webinar may it may resonate with you as well, but perhaps some of those who aren't engaged, they're not coming to the regional meetings, they don't go to conference, they don't respond to emails or communications that you send out, yet you'll then get a barrage of stuff coming back, and it can feel like a bit of like a one-way relationship. And then sometimes you just have to kind of question, well, is the model right for them as well? Is it right for both of us? So that does not really happen that often at all, and you're bound to get a few of those comments. But I think that the key thing for me really is kind of, well, how you deal with it. And I think, it's good to acknowledge it. It's good to take the positives from it and look at it as an opportunity to kind of improve, enhance something that perhaps you may not have thought about, and you may have kind of just got a bit complacent in some areas. And sometimes it could always be a good wake-up call as well.
Yeah, true. Aaron, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Richard was just saying, I think, it's the, having that kind of the honesty that you want from them, and you've asked them the question, so you've got to kind of be, you've got to be accepting of the answers, and yes, you may not want to hear them, but it's having that understanding that, you are probably going to hear some, and shock, some franchisees want to pay less royalty. I mean, that's so you might hear that time and time again, but as Richard said, sometimes it's those that are the most disengaged that come up with those comments. So I think for us, it's a lot of the time it's about trying to reframe those conversations. So they've mentioned about, it might just be a flippant comment about wanting to pay less royalty, but is that because they don't understand the value that we're offering to them as a franchisor? So I think it's about trying to identify that and try and, again, going back to the communication side, is trying to position to them in different formats, the value that we do offer as a franchisor. So, that maybe they then start to understand a bit more about the value of paying that royalty, or, so it's those kind of conversations which I think are really important to have. And as I say, our system has evolved over the 40 years that we've been operating, not because we know everything's the right way to do it, it's because franchise owners come up with new ways of doing things. And I think as a franchisor, you've got to be open to that, and that's how your business is going to develop and evolve, regardless of how long you've been operating.
Yeah, definitely. Very useful hints and tips there. Thank you. Right, moving on to the next question. This is a maybe a big reflector one. What do you think is your magic mix? What's the magic dust that's enabled you to win your 5-star awards year on year? Is it a culmination of the things that you've just been talking about? Is it something else? Aaron, if I come back to you in terms of, you know, what you've just said about, you know, you've thought a lot about the feedback itself, but it might actually lead you elsewhere, which is really interesting. Yeah,
I think absolutely from our perspective, you know, Pam Bailey, who many of you know, was the CEO for Molly Maid for many years, and something that she ingrained in all of us is that the franchisee is at the heart of everything you do. Every decision you make, everything that you do, is if you put the franchisee as the priority, then you probably won't go too far wrong. So I think, you know, that really is something that has become kind of ingrained in our DNA in terms of what we do at Molly Maid. Is this the best thing to do for the franchisee? And almost kind of have your kind of franchisor hat on as a secondary, you know, because actually if it's best for them, then, you know, maybe not short term, but maybe long term it will benefit you. So yeah, I don't necessarily think there's kind of a, you know, any kind of magic there, but it is just making sure that, you know, they are your priority. And as I say, if you're doing the right thing by them, then you'll get the buy-in from them. And that's what the franchise model is all about. It's a partnership. So, you know, you work hand in hand with them and they feel they're getting value from you, then you'll see that in return from them in their performance and what they give to you and the brand.
Yeah. No, that's a very important part. And I think, you know, it relates back to, for us, especially when we run surveys, when we share reports, it's not actually about the outcome of the award. It's about everything that you're putting into it and everything that you're doing, exactly as you say, to put that franchisee back at the heart and improve their lives, improve what you're doing. Then hopefully what you'll see is that knock-on impact as a franchisor.
I think
so it's very good.
Asking them, you know, putting this survey out there, that shows that you care about what they're saying. And I think that's
definitely
sometimes gets missed by just doing this. It just shows that you really care about their input, and you might do it in other ways, but I think this is the perfect way to do that, to get their input and show that you really care about their feelings.
Yeah, and it's again how you communicate it and message it in the right way. No, I love that. Thank you. Anne-Marie, what do you think's enabled you to win your 5 stars?
I was going to say the same as Aaron. I think by just doing the survey shows your network that you want to listen, you want to take action. And I think we've got to a point now, if we didn't send it out each year, they'd be going, well, why aren't they doing that? Do they want to stop listening to us now? Do they want us not to be open and honest anymore? So we are in it for the long haul. The culture is there now. They know that they can do that every year. But I think for us, there's a little bit on timing. So we always tend to do ours straight after conference. And not only because, you know, we hope that they've gone away from conference feeling inspired and positive, but again, because at conference we have reiterated a lot of things. We've come together. It's a reminder, especially our conference this year. We haven't had one since 2019. So it can all feel a bit disjointed. Your regular monthly Zooms only go so far. So getting everybody together again really reminded them of the culture and the values that we all share, and reiterate some of the things that we've been doing, and that we remind them of the information that's been put out. So they go away sort of full of the information and knowledge as well, but also feeling quite positive. It's quite a good time of year that we do it. So I think a tip for any franchisor out there, if you are going to do it, is try and think, if your business is seasonal at all, then it might not be the best time to send the survey out if it's one of their quiet periods, or if it's a low time. I mean, we did consider, do we send it during lockdown? Because everyone's probably, regardless of Diddy Dance, feeling very negative and very low right now. And so is there any point sending it out? Because human nature always will favor the negatives over the positives, and then is that what you're going to end up receiving? But we did, and I'm really glad we did, actually, because when I look back as well, we actually did ramp up the support, not just on a business level, on a personal level as well, to really ensure that we could be there for them personally, just to speak to them, support them, find out, not in our remit, but find out what help the self-employed grants were, all of those excess things that we could. So I think timing is quite good to try and, when you get a feel that the network is feeling positive, but also reassuring them that you always act on that feedback, you're always listening, and you will always implement changes if needed.
Yeah, that's so important. As in, times will be tough. Pandemic was one of the key times when we really saw, things really hit the fan that were completely outside of our control. But it's how we rallied together. I think that a lot of franchisors got their franchisees through it, and they probably had more loyalty coming out of it than we ever thought was possible, because we faced into a challenge of a lifetime together. Richard, what are your thoughts on how you've been winning 5-star awards? I mean,
Well,
he's got it really clearly in the back there, year on year on year, hasn't he? Just in case
Well,
anyone missed it.
to be honest, like every single thing that both Aaron and Anne-Marie have said, the same principles, exactly what we do as well. And I think it just shows, so the people on this panel, just how well aligned we are as franchisors, because we're all thinking and doing, the same thing. And I think kind of just being in the franchise industry is great, because you can learn of so many other franchisors who have been there and done that. So, but look, for us, it's communicate, and keep delivering value, keep delivering new initiatives and ways you can help, and keep showing that you exist as well, because there's about 70 people here at the support centre in Norwich, and it's important to keep showing to your network, like who are the key people, what are you doing, even the directors' point of view, kind of, they're out on our weekly email, keep communicating, okay, big updates in their departments, initiatives, what they're working on, how the franchisees can help benefit from that, any examples, testimonials, case studies, lots of touch points. And as Anne-Marie said, we haven't had our annual conference as well since 2019. Our next one's going to be next year. And that communication piece has never been so more important. And yes, the technology has really, really helped with that, with Teams and Zoom and all those things. But we've had to think on our feet with a lot of this stuff and learn as we go. But we've just made sure that we're there for our franchisees and keep showing that strong leadership as well. There's so much you can do to just be there to show that you care. And this survey and kind of running surveys like this, and as Anne-Marie said, it's all about timing. For us, it's very, very tactical in terms of when we time our surveys, because like Anne-Marie, we run them just after what we have like a regional meetings in the autumn, this sort of time of year now. And when everyone's kind of a bit sort of fired up, they've had some updates, they've had some initiatives, they're kind of leaving on a high. And that's kind of when we kind of like send the survey out. And also for us and for our network of accountants, it's also just a bit of a quieter time in the run up to tax season, which kind of really kicks off December, January time. So the survey shows that you care, but also being able to kind of deliver it at the right time as well can really help. And to have to think it through very carefully in terms of, okay, what are your plans for the year ahead? When do you think it's going to be best for you to kind of run this survey to kind of get the most engagement? Because you want as many as your franchisees to engage with the survey as well. And that's not always easy to get everyone to just kind of fill out the form and everything. And the form and the way that the user interface is set up is quite easy and straightforward for franchisees to do. But at the same time, you still need to get them engaged and get them to participate in it. So striking while the iron's hot can really help with all of that. And ultimately, if you're going to run a survey, you want to listen to your network, you want to listen to and hear from as many people as possible. So yeah, as I say, the survey really, really helps.
Great, thank you, Richard. And actually, interestingly, you're answering one of the Q&A that's come through as well, which is about how do you encourage franchisees to take part? As it feels often like the same percentage of the network take the time to answer. So I think you've started to answer some of that. Anybody got anything to add to what Richard started? Anything that you do to really encourage that participation and ramp it up?
Well, I think obviously we always thank them for doing it, but I think it's sort of reiterating that point. Thank you so much for doing this. Obviously, we can't always action on things if we don't know about them. So you want to hope that we do that in the lead up on the reminders about the survey. Don't forget this. We want to really listen to you. We want to really be able to action things. If anything's troubling you, this is the great way to communicate it with us, because you don't have to be on a call or face-to-face on a Zoom, where it can be a bit awkward. You can be really completely honest and really transparent on that. So it's just that reminder, but showing them that you do take action on that, so that if they do feel they have a grievance, or they do feel that they would love to see something new implemented, that they have that safe space to do that anonymously.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Sharon?
I'll say from your side, Mel, from outside of franchising with the organisations you work with more in the employee engagement sector, is there anything specifically they do to try and increase that response?
Yeah, so great question put back on me. Well done, Sharon. Yeah, I liked that move. So for me, I think the biggest link to people filling out a survey, any survey, is their belief that something will be done with their feedback. And that's proven. It's really clear that if you keep acting, so this is why these three are sitting here with us, they get great response rates because they're doing things with the feedback. People see it, which is really hard if it's the first time if you're running a survey to convince people about how you'll utilize it. But then once you have, it's about, again, demonstrating and going back to your point that you made earlier on the webinar, Sharon, looping the feedback back in whenever you've done anything that acts on their feedback, and making sure that they understand that this hasn't come from my feedback or my thoughts. This has come from your voice and you sharing, which is really, really important. I think that's the best way of improving engagement in terms of participation with the survey, but it can take time. And the second point is around communication. What's in it for me to fill out this survey? Again, we work with lots of different clients that do it in lots of different ways. Are there little incentives that you can drop her through? Are there things just to demonstrate to them about how you'll be feeding back and communicating it, what kind of plans it's going to inform? So if you're going through a whole change and looking through how you're going to set your strategy for the next year, saying we're going to be using your feedback from this survey to do that, it can be as clear as that and directive. That sometimes helps.
It's demonstrating that value to them, isn't it? That's really the key bit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aaron. Right. I'm gonna move us on to a question, which is, how do you use your 5-star award? But whilst we're answering that kind of more generic question, we've got a brilliant question from Simon Wise. So rather than maybe just looking at the 5-star award in isolation, let's look at all. Oh, sorry, I was pressing the wrong button. Let's look at all the feedback that we receive from the surveys, from completing the reports, and we receive back from our franchisees. How do we use it all in terms of 5-star, anything else for franchisee recruitment, or just the output in general? Aaron, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's been something that's been, there's lots of awards out there, but ones that are kind of almost voted for by your franchisees, are the most valuable from our perspective. Certainly that's something that we've kind of realized over the last few years that we've been doing it with WorkBuzz, is that the value of that award is kind of above and beyond everything else. When you're speaking from my role is obviously business development for Molly Maid, and you're speaking to potential franchisees, and they love to hear from you, but actually they want to hear from those that are on the front line. So when you can stand up there and show them that these awards that we've received, this acknowledgement has come directly from franchise owners, it really supports that straight from the off. So whilst yes, you want to get them into speaking to them, this is a great kind of initial hook. So I think to your previous point about demonstrating value to your franchise owners to get them to participate, I think that links in, because if you're able to stand up there and show and demonstrate that you've got this award, that really shows to them that you're celebrating this and they're part of that, and that's such a huge, that you are in it together. It's a partnership. So we've started to use it as a kind of one of the the key hooks when we are discussing it, because it separates us from other people in the industry that maybe aren't doing it, particularly in our industry. If there's others that aren't participating in that, it shows that we are 5-star award winners, and this is coming directly from our franchise owners. So so for us, it's become a big part of our kind of recruitment kind of advertising plan, that allows us to kind of throughout the year drip feed it through to potential franchise owners, and to really celebrate that with our existing ones as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I think it's demonstrating a point in differentiation as well, isn't it? And I think ultimately, if you do win the 5-star, brilliant. But there's other things you can do even with the reports to utilize that for your kind of branding and your recruitment of franchisees. So good to see. Richard, how do you use your 5-star?
Yeah, well, as you can tell, we like to shout from the rooftops and get it out in as many places as possible, really, and be really proud of it. And I agree with what Aaron said there. I think for us, we love this award because it's an award that's ultimately been given to us by our franchisees.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of for us the nicest accolade, really. We use it everywhere. You know, we've got our wall in our main room where we have our discovery days. You know, we have the banner behind me. We've got all the certificates up, and when we do run our discovery days, we does love to talk about them. We'll talk about the WorkBuzz survey on the slide in terms of what that award means to us, but we'll also point to all the certificates on the wall. And I think that's so powerful. So when prospects have made that long and arduous journey up here in Norwich, and they come into our support centre, we do love to kind of put our refreshments and stuff just underneath where all the certificates are, and then we can then just kind of talk about kind of those awards and everything. But we use them everywhere: prospectuses, website, recruitment portals, social media. Steve Frost, the CEO of WorkBuzz, he does a video that we kind of buy, and kind of in that video he just talks about the WorkBuzz survey, but then he just talks about Tax Assist and our results and everything, and that's a nice little video that we use on our website, social media posts and everything. So that we send a news story out in as many places as possible, and we use the badge as and where we can, really. So for us, for franchise recruitment, it's really, really powerful. And we get a nice infographic as well that the WorkBuzz team designs for us. And we use that on our Discovery Day slides and our prospectus website. And that's just a nice little snapshot of the percentages and kind of, you know, how we've performed and everything. So it's really, really powerful, really, really meaningful, and something that we just love talking about because it is, as I said, it's kind of given to us by our franchisees, and what better validation.
Absolutely. Anne-Marie, anything to add to what Jess
Not really, but I think it really is, especially in some industries, can be really oversaturated now. It is definitely, like Aaron was saying, how do you stand out from the crowd? How do people, it can be very overwhelming, I think, for potential franchisees to make a decision. There's so many key factors that go into that. And if they've narrowed it down to a couple of things that are all in the same industry, then surely something that is as transparent and honest as anonymous survey from the franchise network, it's showing that social proof. You can write up your amazing glossy brochures and prospectuses, and the website can look amazing, but on all of our social media, the website, all of that, like Richard was saying, we have it on there as well. Do you want to know why we are 5-star franchisees winners again? We have all the years lined up in one big long logo as well, so it shows that social proof of how long we've maintained that. And I just think on the open day, again, we have a whole slide dedicated to it where we really talk about what is on the survey, the value, the culture, the relationships, the rewards. We make sure that we mention what they are being surveyed on, the elements and the areas on there, so that they know it's not just, oh, they've just answered 2 questions on do they like what they do. It shows you what detail the survey is in. And so we make a big deal of that on the franchise recruitment, as well as that social proof leading up for that decision making process for a potential franchisee as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That was very helpful, and I think we've answered that question through and through. Any more questions from the audience? I think we've got 1 minute left, but whilst any other questions come in, what I just want to say is a huge thank you to all our panelists. It would all be very well Sharon and I trying to talk through all of that, but it is so much more meaningful by having your real life examples. And what is really clear to me coming onto this panel and listening to your stories is that it's been a journey. It's taken time to get there, to learn ourselves, to improve our franchise businesses, work with our franchisees, and make tweaks here and there. But that doesn't happen without people like yourselves that are willing to listen and learn and take on feedback and hear from the voices of your franchisees. So I'm sure that they're all very happy to be led by yourselves. So thank you for sharing your hints and tips. And yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca's validated that she agrees with me that you're all great. You've all done an amazing job. So thank you very much for sharing today with us. For anybody that's attending, anybody got any follow-up questions, then please do just email us. You can, I think, email sharon.weston@workbuzz.com. But if not, then you can email hello@workbuzz.com. We'll filter through, and any follow-up questions, let us know. We'll be sending a recording of this webinar out shortly. All right. Well, that's all from us for now. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.